network, and yes, an ordained reverend. Let me repeat that again, an ordained reverend, which I have been since 2016. I have also been an itinerant preacher since 2007. And for those who may not know, I taught at a faith-based law school, the University of St. Thomas Law School, for 13 years, focused on faith, social justice, and the law. So my faith informs my activism. When you see me on the front lines, when you see me speaking truth to power, when you see me disrupting business as usual, that is the result of my faith and my belief in the gospel of Jesus Christ. My faith also played a primary role in organizing and co-organizing the demonstration that happened at City's Church last Sunday, the day before the official Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And we called it the Martin Luther King Jr. edition because our society commemorates Dr. King and his words, but most of the time, we do not repeat his actions, which had to do with disrupting the status quo, calling out our government, just like his Beyond Vietnam speech did, and made him one of the most hated men in America. So we have to understand that when you are fighting for racial justice, equality, and civil rights, there's a large contingency within our population that does not want to hear the truth, that specializes in distractions and gaslightings and threats. As a matter of fact, I want to read to you all an email that I received just today. It's one of many, but this is what a person wrote to me. You're very lucky I wasn't in church when you idiots came in. Good, speaking about Renée Good, deserves what she got, and you would have gotten the same, dumb bitch. So that's what someone wrote to me. And again, it's one of many emails that I have received from these MAGA supporters, from people who have a problem with the fact that we came into the church to confront an injustice, and do not have a problem with the fact that you have an ICE director, not just an ICE agent, as some people have said, but the director of the ICE field office in the state of Minnesota, also serving as a pastor at City's Church in St. Paul. Someone help me understand how it's possible to hold both roles with integrity, with honor, because the gospel that I believe in, the foundation, says that we are to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Now contrast that gospel message to what we have been seeing by ICE and the terrorism that they have engaged in on the streets of St. Paul, Minneapolis, and surrounding suburbs, and including outstate Minnesota, where they have literally kicked in people's doors. They have dragged people out of their homes. As a matter of fact, on Sunday, while we were in City's Church, one of the most egregious things that they did was brought out a Hmong elder wearing a robe and some pajama shorts, it looked like, and they wouldn't even let the man put on full clothing, knowing that we're dealing with freezing cold temperatures here in Minnesota. And they did the same to a Liberian immigrant by the name of Garrison in North Minneapolis, where they kicked in the man's door and came in with big guns and took him out. And then NPR reported that when he got to the detention facility, they took trophy photos with him, like he was a slave or an animal that they caught out in the wild. And he wasn't the only one that they did that to. So somebody tell me, how is it acceptable for David Easterwood to be a pastor when he is condoning this kind of conduct? And not just condoning it through his silence when it comes to addressing it publicly with our community, but the fact that he was referenced in the lawsuit that was filed by the ACLU in December on behalf of 6 residents, calling out the retaliatory and abusive tactics by ICE. And you know what David said in that lawsuit? There is no evidence that this is going on. It's the protesters and their aggression that's at fault. Well, think about what Rebecca Good said, the wife of Renée Good. They had guns, we had whistles. Mm-hmm. So you are talking about nonviolent, peaceful protesters with whistles, rocks, ice, and occasionally fireworks, being compared to these thugs coming into our community with high-powered assault weapons, who have flashbang grenades, who have tear gas and green gas, being able to unleash these military-grade weapons upon our community. And instead of these issues being addressed, what do we get from the federal government? Threats of investigating those of us who were involved in a peaceful demonstration at City's Church. The same federal government that made up lies after the brutal murder of mother and wife Renée Good, falsely claiming that she was a domestic terrorist, falsely claiming that she tried to run over ICE agent Jonathan Ross. How dare they? And then putting out a statement that they're not going to investigate him on top of all of that. And what did the Vice President of the United States say, who is also a lawyer? That this man has total immunity, which is false under the law. So these people need to be called out and they need to be held accountable for continuing to assault the very people who are standing up for freedom, justice, and equality. This does not just affect immigrants. It's bad enough that it affects immigrants, but it also affects American citizens. And it doesn't matter whether they are adults or whether they are children. Think about the day that Renée Good was killed. That same day, ICE officers, federal officers went to Roosevelt High School and they assaulted young people, pepper sprayed them and physically assaulted them. And then they tackled one of their staff members in front of these kids. Think about the family of 8 that was driving in North Minneapolis on the day that the Venezuelan national was shot in the leg. On that day, as that family was driving, so a mother, a father, and 6 children, ICE agents unleashed military-grade munitions on that family's vehicle, causing a flashbang grenade to go under their car and tear gas to go into their car. 2 of their children had asthma and could not breathe. But even worse, a 6-month-old baby lost consciousness during that attack. A 6-month-old baby, an innocent family, because of the lawlessness and the recklessness by ICE. Now think about that. And then you think about the board of City's Church. Instead of them saying, you know what, we made a mistake. David Easterwood should not have been allowed to continue to remain as a pastor on our roster at this church in light of all of the abuse and harm being levied by ICE, if they were true to the gospel that I just referenced. But instead, what did they do? Issue a statement calling protesters lawless. That's the kind of gaslighting that we're dealing with here. It's unconscionable and it's unacceptable while human lives are at stake. So today, we are calling for the resignation of so-called Pastor David Easterwood from City's Church. We are asking City's Church to operate in truth and integrity and the true meaning of the gospel, and to recognize that David Easterwood's dual role as a pastor and as the director of the ICE office is a most definite conflict of interest, and it cannot stand. Thank you. So with that, I am calling up next Monique Cullors-Doty, who is the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Minnesota and one of the co-organizers of the demonstration that we held at City's Church on Sunday. Let's welcome Monique.
Aside from being co-founder of Black Lives Matter Minnesota, I am an ordained deacon. And one of the roles of the deacon in the church is for correction. When I learned of David Easterwood's role in the church, in city church. It was obvious that there was a need for correction. When we went to that church in peace, we did not storm city church as it's been reported in Fox News. We did not descend from helicopters. We did not have military gear. We walked in peacefully. This was not January 6th.
Listen.
January 16th.
Yes. Listen.
This was not an insurrection. This was a correction. Because you cannot stand in four walls and call yourself a church if you are not truly preaching, teaching, living, and walking the true gospel. It is an abomination for someone to put the title of reverend, which means reverence for God, before his name, and act as a field director for ICE. There is nothing about the ICE operations that we have seen here firsthand in Minnesota that aligns itself with the gospel of Jesus Christ. There is not a teaching in the Bible that supports what is happening with the immigrant community here, what is happening with peaceful protesters, what is happening for those who are standing up for the rights of others, for those who are putting their bodies on the line, for those that have taken wrongful arrests and wrongful detention. There is nothing in the Bible that supports what ICE is doing. And it is absolutely hypocritical for David Easterwood to be in the role as a director, a field director for ICE in Minnesota, and stand in the pulpit and proclaim the gospel. It is sinful at best. And for the church to continue to support that is problematic as well. I don't know what Bible they are reading. I don't know what pages they decided to skip, but it's not hard to find what Jesus said. You can find a Bible where Jesus' words are highlighted and read if you don't care to read the entire book. But it does not condone what ICE is doing. And I denounce David Easterwood as a minister of the gospel. I denounce him as a legitimate vessel of God. And I denounce him as someone who is able to bring people to the cross in truth and integrity and in honesty. I don't know if he's assigned his field agents when they kick in someone's door to hand them a tract to tell them about Jesus. Is that what he's doing? I don't know. But what I can see right now is that there is a church of people that are being led astray. From the response when we were in the church, there was no surprise about David Easterwood's role. As a matter of fact, they tried to deny it. They tried to deny it. It's very clear on the website. I pastor at that church. And when I say they were not surprised, it leads me to believe that there needs to be a further investigation into the other pastors of the church and how many other members of the church are actually ICE agents. Because birds of a feather flock together. That people who are walking in the fruit of the Spirit, who are walking in discernment, would know and understand and recognize the spirit of evil that has to be operating within that body. There is no way that someone who is grounded in the Word is going to just sit by and just sit and enjoy a song that's played over the speaker, as we heard during the service, and not pause to question, why were these protesters here peacefully, hands up, don't shoot, chanting justice for Renée Good, chanting justice for our immigrant community, chanting in the name of Jesus because it is what was righteous. And the pushback that we are getting is absolutely ridiculous. For people who are saying, oh, they shouldn't protest in the church. What do they think Jesus did when he turned over the table?
Listen.
Gentle word, gentle means are for gentle people. There is nothing gentle about ICE. There's nothing gentle about an ICE field director. So we came and we did what was necessary. And hopefully this opens up a greater conversation for the Southern Baptist Convention, which has already been debating and struggling with immigration and its stance, which is crazy in and of itself, that they would choose half to ignore the Bible and the other half to call for stronger immigration law. Well, let's be clear. Let's imagine, how hard was it to come through Ellis Island for their ancestors? Not hard. So I say this, standing in solidarity with my other organizers and the other protesters that showed up with us. We stood on the side of what was right. We stood up for our immigrant community, and that's what we all need to do. So when we see other people wrongfully under attack, no one should just sit by idly. Come out in the comfort of your home. Come out in the streets. Find your place and see what you can do to organize, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. So as you can see, 2 faith leaders were responsible for co-organizing the demonstration that took place on Sunday. And I have to say that I'm really disappointed overall in our faith community. We are seeing maybe a handful of pastors in this community, including so-called progressive ones, speaking out against this, but more need to use their voices, especially because of the fact that the Trump administration rolled back protections for houses of worship. That is something that the media has completely missed. They sent out guidance saying that ICE agents can enter houses of worship with a warrant. ICE agents have also arrested people in the parking lots of churches, waiting around for people to come out, which has had an impact on our immigrant community because many of those churches have fewer people attending because they are afraid. So if the Trump administration cared about what happened inside of a church, then he would have strengthened protections for churches in the midst of these ICE raids instead of weakening those protections. But we need our faith leaders to speak out. We see you at Target, but we need to see you on the front lines of this fight. As well, calling out accountability for the federal government for their lies and manipulations and their abuse. Next, we will hear from Trayvon Cruz, who is the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Minnesota and was also one of the protesters at last Sunday's demonstration. Let's welcome Trayvon.
Jesus said, love thy neighbor, but the actions from ICE are very hateful right now. For a pastor to be the director of a hateful organization in our community and having a church in a very diverse community, the city of St. Paul is one of the diverse communities in the country. So for a pastor to be conducting ICE raids in a diverse community is very, very, very hypocritical to us. We came in, and the organizers came in saying, hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. But when Dylan Roof was in a church with black people, he prayed for them, and then he shot them and killed them. During the 60s, you know about the bombing campaign where black churches continued to be bombed and bombed. We just came in for a discussion about humanity. So there's a very different ideal of how we were approaching churches and how white supremacists have been approaching churches.
Yes.
Lastly, our civil rights protections, racism is costing the United States trillions and trillions of dollars. And civil rights were put into place to address so that black people can be treated civilly. And so for Donald Trump, the President Trump, to reverse that is harmful not only to black people, but harmful to America and also harmful to the American economy. You see the job numbers are real low. You have historic job numbers, and a lot of that is coming from 300,000 Black women have been fired since the Trump administration has came into office. And so instead of using the Department of Justice to investigate peaceful protesters, we think the Department of Justice should get back to investigating police brutality.
Yeah.
The Department of Justice should continue to investigate real housing discrimination against Black people and other people of color, and education discrimination, historical injustices. That's what the Department of Justice should be engaged in, not investigating peaceful protesters. Donald Trump says that has experience with law enforcement in the United States, and he feels like it has been unjustly used against him. So we're demanding that he don't unjustly use it against us or anybody else in the United States. Black lives
Matter.
Black lives
Matter.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from the woke farmer, who was a part of our demonstration at City's Church on Sunday. Let's welcome him.
My name is William Kelly. I'm a combat infantry veteran. I'm a patriot. I'm a defender of human dignity. And now I'm being labeled as a domestic terrorist. We came into that church with peace, while they leave Black churches in pieces.
Listen.
Somali community, Somali citizens are afraid to go to their mosques. Latinos are afraid to go to their churches. Whether they're citizens or not, they're afraid because this Gestapo, Trump's Gestapo, is terrorizing them. They're afraid to leave their homes. But we went in there and we preached the words of Jesus at them. Jesus said to love thy neighbor. Jesus said to welcome aliens from faraway places. But we're terrorists? They're calling me a professional agitator now? Well, yes, I am. I am an agitator because people need to be agitated. What they're doing to this nation is unconstitutional. It is inhumane. It is treason. It is disgusting. ICE is the complete opposite of Christianity. You cannot be an ICE agent and be a pastor. That is a white supremacist church. As long as that pastor is allowed to preach there, it is a hateful church. Those are not Christians. Those are evil people if they support that. So we will continue to fight. We will continue to stand up for our Black, Latino, and all communities because we care. Because we care about humanity. Because we care about the Constitution. And I'm getting hundreds of death threats since that protest on Sunday. And I just want to say I will not be intimidated. I will continue my mission for peace. I will continue my mission to stand for the Republic, to stand for the Constitution, to stand for humanity. All power to the people.
Listen.
Next, we will hear from Toussaint Morrison, who is an independent journalist and also an activist. He was not a part of the protest, so I'm letting the federal government know.
Don't send
him. He was not a part of the protest, but he stands in solidarity with us. Let's welcome him.
My name is Toussaint Morrison, and I was baptized in a New Orleans kitchen sink
Listen.
by an Irish Catholic woman named Carol Van Dusen. And I don't know any situation where she would say that harboring an ICE field officer who also works at a church is something that Jesus would stand by. There is a reason why they wear masks. It's because they know that what they're doing is not right. It's because they know that their actions are violence and that their actions are only partaken against a certain demographic of community. They know that they're engaging in racism, misogyny, xenophobia, and anti-immigration. They're engaging in the worst kind of behavior. And the reason why they cover their faces is because they know that they're doing wrong. And when David Easterwood was found out, you could see it in the face of Jonathan Parnell that he was caught.
Listen.
You know when somebody knows that they done fucked up. And
Listen.
that was Jonathan Parnell. Jonathan Parnell couldn't do anything but go back and forth with Don Lemon and then tell him to leave. Jonathan Parnell had the audacity to say that he was in the house of God. I have to tell you right now, the house of God is wherever your community is.
That's right.
It is not in a place that harbors an ICE field officer. The duplicity to be part of ICE and be a pastor at the same time is some type of strange preservation of white comfort that's built on blood.
That's right.
And we can no longer allow it. The duplicity that's occurring right now is Lisa DeMuth saying that the actions on Sunday were totally unacceptable. Meanwhile, her caucus directs Nick Shirley to go terrorize Somali neighborhoods.
Listen.
Directs Nick Shirley to go make fraudulent claims about fraud in black communities. If Lisa DeMuth looked in the mirror for 1 second, she might see the humanity in herself, in her own black skin, of the same people that she has been trying to criminalize throughout her entire campaign run for governor. And make no mistake, Chris Medell, who is now trying to protect Jonathan Ross and is running for governor of Minnesota, that is not just in a vacuum. There are many people like Chris Medell, and this is the Minnesota that we want to change. This is the Minnesota that we're addressing. This is the Minnesota that is inside of City's Church. And when their white comfort gets disrupted, the look in Jonathan Parnell's eyes is all you need to take a look at. It's because they want to preserve their way and they don't want to address the black and brown blood that fills the streets. They don't want to address the duplicity. I wish that black security guard right there,
Yes,
who
sir.
told all these protesters to move, would say the same thing to ICE.
Listen.
But they stand here and do the open dope and he's going to tell people to move again, but he's never going to do it to ICE.
Listen.
He's never going to hold his co-workers accountable. He's never going to do it. And that's the small thing that we're asking right now. Is that if you're gonna direct terror upon Somali daycares, if you're gonna demand accountability, take accountability for your own actions. Take accountability for your own words. And it seems that there is a large narrative where nobody wants to do anything about that. The house of God is on 38th in Chicago.
Listen.
The house of God is in the car where the children were, where the flashbang went underneath. The house of God is wherever your community is. And these places that are devoid of it need to be addressed. David Easterwood was found out. That's it. He went to sleep just fine, profiting from pain. He went to sleep just fine, knowing that nobody knew his name. He went to sleep just fine. And the second that he was found out and called out, what did they do? They wanted to point the finger at everybody else that was protesting there. Because that's what you do. In abuse situations, the first two actions afterwards are isolate and then manipulate the narrative. And that's what they're trying to do right now. But let's not get it twisted. David Easterwood needs to step down from City's Church.
Yes.
And then the rest of these ICE agents need to be held accountable for the murder of Renée Good.
Yes,
And
sir.
for the shooting of a community member on the north side. And for almost killing a 6-month-old child.
Yes.
All power to the people.
Yeah.
Next, we will hear from Michelle Gross, President of Communities United Against Police Brutality and a longtime advocate for accountability. Please welcome her.
Against police brutality, and I stand in solidarity with the people that protested at the city's church last Sunday. What they did was noble, what they did was correct, what they did was holding the truth to power, and that's very important. I want to point out that while the FBI is claiming that the DOJ is claiming that they're now going to investigate people who peacefully protested against ICE, they do no such thing when ICE shows up at churches.
Yep.
When ICE shows up at hospitals. When ICE shows up at schools. They do no such thing. Because this is about a terror campaign. And how dare the community push back against the terror that has rained down on our neighbors.
That's right.
Not guilty. People, thousands of people, more than 25,000 people across the state are literally out daily, warning their neighbors, helping their neighbors, using their whistles, buying groceries for their neighbors, doing other mutual aid things, getting people to their doctor's appointments, all the kinds of things that people who love each other and care about each other in our communities do to stand up for each other. And that's what these people did too. They were standing up for the rest of the community that has been victimized by these ICE agents and that ICE director.
Yep.
And what they did was righteous. I stand with them. And we will not allow them to go down because of this beautiful work. Thank you.
Just a note to Christy Nolman Cash Patel. Michelle Gross was not at the protest. You don't need to investigate her. But who you do need to investigate is Jonathan Ross.
Yes.
For the killing
Yes.
of Renée
Listen
Good.
on.
Before we take questions, I want to point out one additional thing that I think is very important that we've seen happen time and time again, especially since 2020, after the Minneapolis police killing of George Floyd. We have seen it on the front lines of ICE demonstrations, and we saw it after Sunday's demonstration at City's Church. And that is attacks on the free press.
Yeah.
We had several independent journalists who were a part of the demonstration to document, not to participate. There is a difference. We saw Don Lemon, who is a national independent journalist, who came here and now saw on Facebook on Saturday, I'm coming to Minnesota, saw the flyer on my page for the action and showed up without knowing what we were doing and where we were going. And suddenly, he has been demonized by the Trump administration, claiming that he led the protests. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, 4 Black women led the protest.
Listen on.
No matter what we do, our voices get erased. Whether we're taking on the system, taking care of our community, there's an erasure of Black women. But it was 4 Black women who led the protest. But Don Lemon came to document what was happening. And anybody who watched his footage, you saw that he documented our voices and he specifically talked to parishioners to get their side of the story. That's what journalists do. Yep. They talk to multiple sides to try to get information. But to try to demonize this man, and there were even memes, I'm hoping there were memes, that came out last night claiming that the Trump administration was gonna prosecute this man under the Ku Klux Klan Act.
Wow.
Right? That just ridiculousness. The weaponization of our history against us as Donald Trump and his administration tries to erase our history. But we stand in the spirit, in the strength, in the power, in the resistance of the people who came before us, whose voices will not be silent against white oppression and terrorism and white supremacy. That is why we are still standing strong. As you have people in our community afraid for our safety, texting us, sending us messages that are on there. Do I look afraid to you?
No.
No, because I'm standing in the power of the Almighty God.
Yes.
And God is our protector. And at the end of the day, like Queen Esther said, if I perish, I perish. But I will speak the truth.
That's right.
Period, point blank. So these attacks on our press need to stop. We have a journalist here who was attacked by ICE within the last couple weeks. Tear gas, in spite of having a press written across his chest, and also shot with a marker round or a rubber bullet, and now has a boot on his foot for the next 4 to 6 weeks. We've had journalists with their eyes shot out, journalists physically assaulted, pushed to the ground, in spite of ICE and law enforcement knowing that they're journalists. I got a call just yesterday from a local journalist saying that the city of St. Paul was planning to investigate the protest. Well, for those who don't know, City's Church called the police on us, even though we were peaceful and nonviolent. So the St. Paul police did arrive, but they stayed outside of the church until we left. They didn't approach us, they didn't say anything to us. I find it ironic, if that is true what the journalist said about the city of St. Paul investigating our protests. Why haven't you investigated the conduct of the St. Paul Police Department 2 days before Thanksgiving when they aided ICE and terrorizing our community?
That's right.
Where are the results of that investigation? That happened in November. So you can investigate all you want, but you need to look first in your own house and your behavior and how you have participated in the abuse by ICE. So with that being said, we will take questions.
Nikema, I'm wondering, what is your reaction to the DOJ saying they are investigating your actions and that group's actions in the civil rights investigation?
They say they're investigating everyone. They have an investigation right now against Mayor Jacob Fry, against Governor Walz, Cuomo. I mean, James Comey, I'm sorry. The list goes on of people that the DOJ investigates under false pretenses. And yet, we're asking you, investigate Jonathan Ross for the killing of Renée Good. Why isn't that the headline? When you all know that we're being gaslit by the federal government, why do you keep running with headlines from a federal government that is corrupt, that lies to the people, that unleashes these beasts upon our community to attack vulnerable individuals? And when you're gaslighting, you normalize this authoritarian behavior. So that is my response. Yes.
You brought up the Klan Act, and just in the last couple of weeks, DHS posted a song that was written by the Ku Klux Klan on their governmental social media. Also, Donald Trump, just a day before the protest, said that affirmative action hurt white people. And so I think it feels to me, I'm curious your response to this, it feels to me very intentional and targeted that they would bring up an act that was created because the Klan terrorized black churches. Your thoughts?
On MLK Day.
Right.
I would just say that it's churches, but it's also pretty much all parts of civil rights that this current administration is challenging and reversing. But in the long run, it hurts the administration who is doing it. Racism hurts America. I think cities cost America like $16 trillion. And so Mr. Trump and his administration can practice racism, which will continue to hurt America in his economy that he presides over, or he can be inclusive and do the right thing and enforce civil rights laws when it comes to housing discrimination against black people, immigrants, LGBT communities, schools, investigating schools, and investigating our police departments like they're supposed to. Our consent decrees have ended here in Minneapolis, which all our community fought real hard for. The consent decree in Louisiana has ended. There's consent decrees with Breonna Taylor. That consent decree is over. But the crimes and the harm from law enforcement are continuing to impact our community. So Cash Patel, Christy Noem, Pam Bondi, they want to be on the right side of history. They'll do the right thing and investigate real crimes that are happening in the United States.
Yeah.
I also wanted to answer, that's because the Trump administration runs on pure hypocrisy.
Yeah.
So they're going to use lines from a song from the Klan and then utilize a law that was made because of the Klan. It's pure duplicity and hypocrisy. So after this man was shot in North Minneapolis, what happened was Julie Nelson of KARE 11 said, wow, there's some really foul language out here. Now, how can you ask somebody, how can you start policing somebody's language after they've been shot?
Listen.
How does that work? How does that work? If somebody just took one of y'all's cameras and slammed it against the ground and then said, wow, you're getting really, really uppity right now, what would that say to you? It would mean that that person can do no wrong. They want to shoot somebody and then criminalize their widow for being there. And I think you can find it all when Trump was being interviewed. They said Renée Good's father was a big supporter of you. And then he said, well, yes, she said some tough things. It means that he feels he can do no wrong. And you know that this is all falling apart because Axel Henry, we saw SPPD out there with ICE. And then he stood there and buckled under pressure when Georgia Ford made an interview with him. Yes. And he kept saying, well, I think these people are making some wrongful accusations. Georgia Ford says about what? He says, oh, I can't talk about that. That is the type of cowardice and the type of hypocrisy that we're not only seeing in the Trump administration, we're seeing it in major media outlets. And I'm going to finish on this. There's three parts of Minnesota. There's one group that is being overtly racist and being loud and proud about it. Chris Fidel, i.e. There's a second group that's being very racist, but wants to be quiet about it, doesn't want anybody to hear about it, i.e. City's Church. And then there's a third group that's tired of getting shot and then being told to shut up.
Listen.
Those are the three groups.
When Toussaint just said SPPD, he's referring to the St. Paul Police Department. We also got reports that 25 Minneapolis police officers have left the force to join ICE.
Come on.
So because they're now under a state consent decree where their behavior is being monitored, think about that. Now they will be free to help rain terror on the community through ICE, where there are not those safeguards, where the Constitution is not being followed, where the law is not being followed, and where Judge Menendez's temporary injunction that she just issued Friday is still not being followed.
Yeah.
The church put out a statement today, and it said that accosted members of our congregation, threatened children, created a scene marked by intimidation and threat. Conduct is shameful and lawful, will not be tolerated. It goes on to say, we welcome respectful dialogue about present issues. I want to ask you two questions. One, what's your reaction to this part of their statement? And also, did you try to talk with them before going into the church?
Number one, that's a lie. Number two, that's a lie. And number three, that is a lie. To have a church sitting here perpetuating lies to try to criminalize nonviolent peaceful protesters is on brand for why they would have a pastor doubling as the director of ICE in the state of Minnesota. The reality, if anyone watches any of the videos from any angle, what will you see? Nonviolent peaceful protests. I got this information on Saturday. We went into the church on Sunday. And when I stood up after this is what the pastor prayed. Dear Lord, we pray as part of his prayer that you will chasten us and that you will help us to get our house in order. And then he finished his prayer. And then I got up from my seat and I said, excuse me, Pastor, did you just pray that you want God to chasten you and to help get your house in order? And he said, correct. And I said, well, help me understand. How is David Easterwood both a pastor and an ICE agent? As soon as I mentioned his name, he started yelling, shame, shame. That was an opportunity for open dialogue right there in front of the entire congregation where he could have addressed it. He was not interested in addressing it. When I looked into his eyes, just like Tucson said, he looked like a deer caught in the headlights. So I knew full well that he knew that David Easterwood was playing both roles as a pastor and as the overseer for ICE in Minnesota. So no, they weren't serious about dialogue. At no time did he try to engage in dialogue. As a matter of fact, the parishioners were more interested in engaging in dialogue with peaceful protesters. If you look again at the videos, you'll see many conversations between parishioners and protesters that were happening in real time as the demonstration was going on. Because some of the protesters did not know that David Easterwood was a part of ICE. As a matter of fact, some of them said they were afraid of ICE, right? And then if they want to talk, I'm a mom of 4 children, right? I don't want to see my children cry, right? I saw one little boy sitting in the pew who was crying. I had the husband of a progressive pastor that night come onto my Facebook page and say, you know, there were children crying, you know, and they were afraid. And, you know, sitting in church when you guys were there, I said, there are children in their own homes, sitting there afraid because ICE has kicked in their door, has held their family at gunpoint, forced them out, dragged them into the street, cut women out of seatbelts and pulled them out of cars and bashed their windows. There were kids at Roosevelt afraid when ICE members tackled them and pepper sprayed them. Now you tell me what's the difference. So please don't go there. Another gaslighting question if you ask me, and I'm not here for it. Yes.
Real quick, just to clarify, should ICE agents, ICE officers, should they operate in any church in any capacity?
Absolutely. I do not believe that they should. If the church is a sanctuary and a sacred place, as the Trump administration has pretended that they believe that it is, why would Trump deliberately roll back protections for churches under his administration? Why wouldn't he strengthen those protections? So, Michelle, do you want to add to that?
Well, I think, just to validate and say what you say, ICE, as far as I'm concerned, shouldn't operate anywhere. I'll start with that. I think we should abolish ICE. That is my position. That said, they most definitely have no business being in churches, in schools, in clinics, in hospitals. Any place that has been a protected place previously needs to go back to being a protected place. And I want to say one more thing. The DOJ is so interested in investigating a few peaceful protesters who told truth at a church, but they haven't done anything to investigate the more than 24 mosque bombings and attacks on mosques that we have experienced in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota has more attacks on mosques in our state than any other state in the country by far. And this administration, this DOJ has done nothing to address the vandalism against these mosques and the bombings and the fires and all of the horrible things that have happened in those mosques. And that's because they're racist and they're not interested. It's not about religion for them. It's about race and about, backing up white supremacy. And we are not here for it.
I wanted to say one thing. I'm sorry. Renée Good children are crying. As they talking about children was crying in the church. We know Renée Good children are crying. They would never get a chance to see their mother again. And just like you stated, like when they come to our churches and our mosques, they leave them in pieces. They don't leave in peace, just so we clear. We come at them with cameras. We come at them with pens and what have they. They come at us with guns to kill us. What can we do as journalists, as photographers, as just bystanders to basically protect our civil rights, protect ourselves? And not only that, my thoughts and prayers are with all of our families, because we know Minnesota is under attack and we being threatened abysmally. What can we do as independent people and as mothers and fathers just dealing with this gut-wrenching situation?
I mean, the reality is that Congress has sat down on the job. They are enabling this unchecked power and authoritarianism that we are experiencing. We know that 28 members of Congress, all Democrats, came here on Friday for a congressional hearing about the attacks by ICE in Minnesota, but they still have limited power while Republicans are silent and complicit and hold the balance of power. And you can see the local Republicans here aren't doing a darn thing other than stirring the pot. They ought to be ashamed of themselves for allowing this to happen, for condoning it, and for helping to facilitate it, as was mentioned earlier by Toussaint Morrison. I would say on a state level, of course, our state government can use the power of law enforcement anytime, just like they do against citizens. They can direct the local police department, the state troopers, the sheriff's office, they can direct them to arrest ICE agents who violate the law. But not a single one has been arrested. That gives a signal that they can act with impunity. That's part of the problem. So the best thing that we can do is remember the mantra. Who keeps us safe?
We keep us safe.
Who keeps us safe?
We keep us safe.
Yes.
I got a question for Will. After the DOJ announced the investigation on your social media, you said, "Come get me, Pam." So can you expand on your response or how you're feeling, Lenore?
I mean, what we're seeing around this country is they're using their political influence to attack people that disagree with them. They're going to come at me with charges, and I'm not scared of that. There's no base for these charges. I did not block them from, their service. They welcomed us in. They never asked us to leave. The police never came in and removed us. So we didn't stop their service. In fact, people were still praying the entire time. The music was still playing the entire time. So, Pam Bondi, you want to come and arrest me? You want to come and give me charges? So be it. And for all the people giving me death threats, threatening my life, kill me. Go ahead, kill me. Because you know what? As Fred Hampton said, you can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution.
Yes, go ahead.
You asked a minute ago what regular, average, ordinary people can do. And I think people are doing what they could do. They're out, people are out in the community with their whistle. They're out in the community with delivering food to our neighbors, delivering goods and supporting people, driving them to doctor's offices, doing all of the kinds of things that the community could do. What has happened is that the institutions have failed us. Law enforcement is nowhere to be found. They claim that they're outgunned.
Yeah.
I could not believe hearing this nonsense, that they're claiming they were outgunned, because that is, if you recall, the exact excuse that Chief O'Hara used when they waited 5 days to arrest Josh Sawchuk, who had shot Davis Maturi.
Yep.
So I want to remind you that they go to that excuse very quickly. 28 members of Congress came and had a hearing on Friday. Several of us were in that hearing. what astounded me, and I was very glad for that hearing, but what astounded me is that that a certain number of the people in that room had actually voted for more funding for ICE, including Angie Craig.
Mm-hmm.
I want to point out that ICE runs out of money at the end of this month. I want to know who's going to vote no.
Listen.
Yep.
It is time for every one of these members of Congress to vote no. The Republicans, they'll all vote yes, but they need 6 Democrats to be able to put it across the finish line. And I am telling these Democrats, you damn well better not vote for more funding for ICE. It is time for them to lose their funding and get the hell out of our city.
That's right.
Yep.
You know that we
In our
have
state.
and our state. You know that we have 5 times more ICE agents in this state than has ever been collected together in one place anywhere in this country. This is done as a war on the community.
Yeah.
And we are done with it. We are going to continue to stand up with our neighbors. We're going to defend our neighbors. We're going to take care of each other. We're going to show each other the love that we all feel for each other. But it is time for these institutions to step up and do their part as well. And one of the most important is, again, Congress. They have got to not continue to fund ICE.
That's right.
Throw a spy in Congress.
It's also important that we highlight the attacks by ICE on the indigenous community.
Yep.
Obviously, people who are not immigrants, people who were here before Trump's family came, before the white supremacists landed, before Christopher Columbus. So the indigenous community here is being pulled over by ICE if they have their native tags on their cars, on their plates. They're being pulled over. There have been people that have been picked up as they step outside the reservation, and they are being used as pawns because ICE wants the reservations to sign off to allow them to come onto their property, onto the reservations, in exchange for the people that they had picked up who are members of the reservation. So we cannot forget about our indigenous community, and they have their spirit fire that have been going in South Minneapolis, and there was a white supremacist who had attacked one person tending to the fire. So they are under attack as well. So I just say that in solidarity and acknowledgement that everyone here is a possibility for being attacked.
Thank you. Are there any last questions?
I just want to ask this quick question. What about when ICE agents detain the individual and get them in the back and find out they are citizens and then offer them a bonus to find someone that's not a citizen? What do you guys think about that?
Well, that was testimony that we heard on Friday during the congressional hearing from one of the U.S. citizens who was kidnapped by ICE and brought to the detention center for 9 hours. She and another friend who is a half Mexican man, she said that the friend was told that he would get legal support if he needed it by ICE. And then ICE also asked him for the name of activists in this community, right? And so that's what she testified before Congress about. So it is a real problem. So instead of gaslighting us and continuing to ground and center the false narratives coming from the federal government, we ask that the media start centering the truth and stop normalizing authoritarianism and tyranny that we're experiencing. The last thing that I would say as we conclude is that I want to give a message to the parishioners at City's Church. Again, it appears from your conversations that you have with protesters that not all of you were aware that David Easterwood was serving as a pastor, or is serving as a pastor, and is also the director for the ICE field office located at the Whipple Building in St. Paul. So for those who weren't aware, it is not your fault, and we do not hold you responsible for the actions of the leadership of City's Church, including the head pastor, as well as the board, who seemingly condone this conflict of interest. As we call for the resignation of David Easterwood, we would call on parishioners of City's Church to stand with us. Place calls to the leadership of your church and let them know that you are not in agreement with the pastor who is supposed to be preaching the gospel and the good news being the head of this brutality and terrorism being unleashed by ICE agents on our community. So we ask that if you are a true person of faith and a person of good conscience, that you would join our cause in demanding this resignation and demanding an end to the abuse by ICE, and that they leave Minnesota immediately. Now, here's a quote in the words of Dr. King, as we just celebrated his birthday yesterday. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Yes.
Thank you, and God bless you.